Listen to me for the next few moments, because what I am about to tell you may be the turning point your spirit has been waiting for. There comes a moment in every person's life when the shaking is not a sign of destruction, but a sign of construction. When everything feels like it is breaking apart, heaven is actually rearranging your future. You may think you are losing something, but God is positioning you to receive something far greater. You may think you're being pushed back, but God is pulling you into a realm where your faith will breathe again, your hope will rise again, and your financial breakthrough will no longer be a distant dream but a living testimony. Hear me, you are not being abandoned, you are being prepared. Heaven is moving on your behalf right now. There is a deep spiritual law that governs breakthrough. Before God places something into your hands, He strengthens the condition of your heart. And often, this strengthening comes through detachment. You begin to feel less emotionally tied to the things that once controlled your peace. You feel distance from fears that used to dominate your thoughts. You no longer cling to the approval of people, the expectations of society, or the pressure of deadlines. This is not coldness, this is maturity. This is God forging spiritual steel inside you, making you unshakable, so that when the blessing arrives, you will carry it with wisdom, gratitude, and purpose. Do not misunderstand the season you are walking through. And God is preparing a financial blessing. He removes the false shelters first. The places you once depended on start to feel unstable. The sources you once trusted feel empty. Relationships shift, opportunities pause, plans fail, and the enemy whispers, "You are losing everything." But the truth is this: God is detaching you from what cannot sustain you, so He can give you what will transform you. He is breaking the illusion of security, so He can give you true security. What feels like loss is actually divine surgery. God is cutting away what is too small for the future He has designed. In detachment, something sacred happens. Your spirit becomes light again. Your emotions become steady. You stop chasing outcomes and begin resting in God. And that rest is not weakness, it is alignment. Suddenly, your desires become clear. Your purpose becomes sharp. Your faith becomes bold. And heaven responds to bold faith. When your heart is no longer imprisoned by fear, God can trust you with increase. When your identity is no longer tied to money, God can release money into your hands. When you stand firm without trembling at uncertainty, God opens doors no one can shut. Hear this with your being: you are not behind, you are not forgotten, you are not overlooked, you are in a divine process of preparation. The detachment you feel is the sign that God is about to elevate you. He is removing unnecessary weights so you can rise. He is clearing space in your spirit so He can fill it. He is untangling your emotions from the noise of the world so your ears can hear His instruction clearly. And with every layer He removes, the blessing comes closer. Some of you have prayed, "God, bless me financially." And God answered not by giving you money immediately, but by teaching you how to tend without depending on it. He is giving you spiritual authority before He gives you material authority. Because once your heart is free, your hands will overflow. Once your spirit is steady, your life will flourish. Once your faith is anchored, resources will come searching for you. So I say to you with prophetic clarity, do not give up. Do not doubt this season. Do not let the enemy convince you that detachment is a sign of loss. It is a sign of elevation. God is preparing a financial blessing that carries purpose, stability, and abundance. You may not see it yet, but heaven has already released it. You are being positioned, refined, strengthened, and set apart for what is coming. Walk in peace. Walk in confidence. Walk in spiritual detachment. For when your heart is free, your hands can finally receive what God has been waiting to give you. And everything, yes, everything is about to change for you. Emotional and spiritual detachment is not the act of withdrawing from life, nor is it the hardening of the heart. It is the sacred unfolding of strength, a divine maturing that happens when God begins to shift you from dependence on the visible to trust in the invisible. It is the quiet yet powerful moment when you stop allowing circumstances to control your peace and instead allow the Spirit of God to anchor your inner world. Detachment is not abandonment, it is alignment. It is not coldness, it is clarity. It is not indifference, it is revelation. When you reach the place where your emotions no longer rise and fall based on what you see, what you feel, or what others do, you step into a higher dimension of spiritual authority. This is the realm where breakthrough becomes natural, because nothing external has the power to destabilize your belief in what God has spoken. TBR, here comes a season in every believer journey when God begins to separate you from the emotional noise of life. The feelings that once overwhelmed you lose their grip. The opinions that once shaped you become irrelevant. The anxieties that once haunted you begin to fade. You start seeing life differ errantly, not through the lens of fear, but through the lens of faith. This shift is not accidental, it is intentional. Heaven is preparing you. When God is ready to elevate you, He first stabilizes you. And stability is born from detachment. Detachment is not the absence of care, it is the restructuring of your care. It is the rerouting of your heart. It is the recognition that your peace does not come from circumstances, but from communion with God. You become less reactive. You become more discerning. You start noticing that things which once triggered you now feel distant and powerless. This is spiritual maturity unfolding. God is teaching you how to stand without crutches, how to walk without leaning on things that were never meant to support you, how to breathe freely without being suffocated by worry. Many people misunderstand this process. They think they're becoming numb or losing passion. But what is actually happening is growth. Passion remains, but panic leaves. Desire remains, but desperation dies. Hope remains, but fear dissolves. And without fear, you become unstoppable. When your emotions no longer dictate your decisions, heaven can trust you with greater responsibility, or why? Greater influence and greater blessing. Because now your actions are not controlled by the temporary, but guided by the eternal. This kind of detachment is a sign that God is preparing something significant, especially in the area of provision. Before God releases financial blessing, He releases emotional discipline. Before He increases what is in your hand, He strengthens what is in your heart. This is why the season of detachment often comes before the season of breakthrough. God is removing the emotional instability that would cause you to mismanage the blessing. He's removing the fear TBR would make you cling to money instead of trusting Him. He's removing the insecurity that would cause you to doubt your ability to carry what He is about to place upon your life. You begin to feel an internal shift. You no longer chase opportunities, you attract them. You no longer crumble under pressure, you rise above it. You no longer seek validation, you walk in conviction. You no longer worry about loss, you trust in divine replacement. This is the birth of inner strength. This is when you realize that the blessing is not the money, it is who you become before the money arrives. When your heart is steady, the blessing will not overthrow you. When your spirit is grounded, success will not corrupt you. When your identity is secure in God, abundance will not shake you. Emotional and spiritual detachment is the preparation of the vessel. It is God purifying your motives, sharpening your discernment, and strengthening your resilience. It is the quiet confidence that whatever comes or goes, your foundation remains unshakable. And when God sees this foundation, He releases what He has been holding for you. Detachment becomes the doorway through which blessing flows, because only a free heart can fully receive what heaven has prepared. When God is preparing a financial blessing for your life, the first thing He often does is gently, sometimes forcefully, detach your heart from the things that have held your trust. Many people think that when resources decrease, opportunities CBR lose, or support fades, it is a sign of abandonment. But in the realm of the Spirit, it is often the opposite. God removes your dependence on unreliable sources so that you learn to rely solely on Him. He shifts your trust from the limited to the limitless, from the temporary to the eternal, from human systems to divine supply. This process is not always comfortable, but it is always purposeful. God detaches not to deprive you, but to elevate you. He clears away the illusions of security so that He can lead you into a blessing built on a foundation that cannot be shaken. When God begins this SBR acrid work, everything that once felt familiar starts to feel distant. You may notice that people you once leaned on become unavailable. Income streams you trusted begin to fluctuate. Plans you were sure about suddenly feel uncertain. It can feel like the ground beneath you is shifting, but what is really happening is that God is removing every false anchor. Anything that would compete for your trust must be released before God can pour out increase. He desires to bless you abundantly, but He will not allow that blessing to rest on a foundation mixed with fear, dependency, or emotional instability. So He detaches you from what is fragile, so He can root you in what is eternal. In this process, your heart goes through a profound transformation. You begin to recognize that your survival never depended on people, that your provision never came from a job, and that your stability never rested on circumstances. You realize that everything you thought was sustaining you was actually being sustained by God. As this revelation deepens, so does your strength. Fear begins to break off your life. Anxiety loses its authority. You stop waking up with the weight of uncertainty because you understand that your destiny is not controlled by the economy or governed by the opinions of others. You become emotionally free, spiritually grounded, and mentally clear. This is the posture of someone God is preparing for financial elevation. In the detachment phase, God also purifies your motives. He examines the hidden places of your heart to see if blessing would build you or break you. If success were handed to you too soon, would you idolize it? If abundance came before maturity, would it distort your identity? If financial increase arrived before emotional stability, would it control you? GBROD knows the answer even when you do not. That is why He detoxes the heart before He delivers the blessing. He removes the fear of lack, the obsession with results, the need for human approval, and the stress that comes from trying to control outcomes. He frees you internally so that when increased CBR ohms externally, you carry it with humility, wisdom, and stewardship. This detachment also exposes where your faith has been shallow. Many people say they trust God, but their trust is rooted in what they can see. When resources are abundant, they feel secure. When resources decrease, their faith cover lapses. God cannot build a kingdom-level blessing on this kind of faith. So He strategically takes you through seasons where your eyes cannot see the supply, but your spirit can sense His presence. Where your hands may feel empty, but your heart remains full of expectation. Where no thing in the Natbar Ural makes sense, yet everything in the spiritual is aligning perfectly. This is the kind of faith that qualifies you for supernatural provision. As you detach from relying on the world's systems, you begin to live in a dimension where God becomes your source for everything. You no longer panic when something shifts. Instead, you discern that God is making room for better. You no longer fear loss because you understand that whatever God removes, He replaces with greater purpose. You no longer cling to opportunities out of desperation because you know that what is meant for you cannot pass you BBRY. This freedom is what allows God to release financial blessing without it becoming a burden. And when God sees your heart fully anchored in Him, not in circumstances, not in people, not in fear, but in His character alone, the blessing begins to manifest. Increase becomes effortless. Provision flow by WES from unexpected places. Favor surrounds you like a shield. Doors open without you forcing them. Breakthrough comes at the perfect moment. Because now your blessing is not built on emotion, it is built on trust. And trust is the soil where God plants His greatest financial miracles. The moment you detach from the outcome and anchor your faith, not in what your eyes can see, but in the unchanging character of God, a supernatural shift begins within you. This shift is subtle at first, like a gentle stirring in the soul, a quiet strength rising from somewhere deeper than emotion. But over time, EBORT becomes undeniable. The fears that once made you hesitate begin to lose their influence. The doubts that once whispered limitations now sound powerless. The anxiety that once controlled your days and nights begins to dissolve. Your spirit steps into a dimension where peace is no longer something Bibaru chase. It flows from within you. This transformation is the foundation of every breakthrough God prepares. Because before anything changes around you, everything must first change in you. There is a mystery in the spiritual realm that only becomes clear when you detach from the need to control. Out BR comes. As long as your peace depends on a particular result, your heart is unstable. As long as you are emotionally tied to how and when God must move, you remain vulnerable to disappointment. But when you release the outcome, when you say with conviction, God, I trust you, even when I don't understand ND, you step into a divine alignment where heaven can move freely. Detachment is not the death of desire. It is the sanctifying of desire. It is the moment when your wants, worries, and expectations pass through the fire of faith and emerge purified, strengthened, and surrendered. Once you detach from the outcome, your faith becomes pure faith, not mixed with fear, not shadowed by anxiety, not weakened by human timelines. This kind of faith is what moves mountains, opens doors, and releases provision. It is the faith that sees miracles not as rare events, but as natural expar. Essence of God, es natubore. It is the faith that no longer begs for reassurance, but walks with quiet confidence, knowing that God's promises are more real than current circumstances. When your spirit reaches this level of detachment, heaven begins to respond to you differently. You are no longer pleading, you are standing. You are no longer uncertain, you are aligned. You are no longer waiting with fear, you are expecting with peace. This inner shift creates an environment where God can trust you with more. Because when your faith is anchored in His character rather than in a specific outcome, you become unshakable. Lifbari can move, but you remain steady. Delays can come, but you remain confident. Challenges can rise, but you remain grounded. You no longer interpret every setback as rejection. Instead, you see divine redirection. You no longer panic when something closes. You recognize that God is guiding you towards something greater. You no longer cling to what is fading, you embrace what God is preparing. This is the spiritual maturity that releases supernatural resources. When your heart is free from controlling outcomes, you begin to see life with extraordinary clarity. You recognize opportunities that were once hidden because your mind was clouded by fear. You hear divine instructions that were once drowned out by anxiety. You make decisions not from desperation, but from discernment. You walk through life with a holy calmness, knowing that nothing can stop what God has ordained. This clarity draws favor toward you. It attracts divine timing. It opens doors without your striving. It aligns people, resources, and opportunities with your purpose. This detachment also transforms your relationship with money. Instead of seeing money as a source of security, you begin to see it as a tool for purpose. Instead of feeling anxious about provision, you feel expectant about assignment. Instead of chasing wealth, you begin attracting what you need to fulfill God's plan for your life. When money no longer defines your confidence, God can release it without it controlling you. When your identity is no longer tied to what you have, God can increase what you have. When your heart is anchored in Him alone, financial blessing becomes a natural extension of spiritual alignment. And then something powerful happens. Because you are no longer emotionally attached to the outcome begins to flow without resistance. Doors open, paths clear, resources appear, ideas come. People show up at the right time. Provision begins to chase you instead of you chasing it. Why? Because you are finally positioned. You are finally aligned. You are finally ready. When your heart is free, heaven can release WBR hat has been stored for you all along. This is the power of detachment. It is the unlocking of breakthrough. It is the soil where your next season grows. It is the signal to heaven that you can carry blessing without being carried away by it. And when this shift happens, think absolutely nothing. CBR and stop what God is about to pour into your life. When you reach the point where your faith is anchored not in what your physical eyes can see, but in who God has already proven Himself to be, something begins to unfold in the invisible realm that cannot be reversed. It is as if heaven responds to THPR, posture of your heart, rather than the condition of your circumstances. This is the moment when God begins to move in ways that defy logic. Doors that were sealed begin to open. Obstacles that once intimidated you begin to shrink. Opportunities that were once hidden begin to reveal themselves. Not because your situation changed first, but because your spirit changed first. When your heart no longer clings to specific outcomes and instead clings to God's character, you walk into a dimension where breakthrough becomes inevitable. You no longer wrestle. You no longer strive. You simply align. And BRD alignment draws miracles. This anchoring of faith creates an atmosphere within you where worry cannot survive. You begin to live with a different kind of confidence, not the confidence that comes from external stability, but the confidence that comes from internal revelation. You know that God is NBROT limited by your environment. You know that He does not need favorable conditions to bless you. You understand that He has been orchestrating your steps long before you realize what He was doing. And this understanding produces a calmness that confuses the enemy. While others panic, you remain STTR 80. While others fear loss, you expect increase. While others question the future, you sense God guiding you toward it. This anchoring of faith is not denial, it is discernment. You are not pretending circumstances are perfect. You are choosing to believe that God is perfect even in imperfect circumstances. And that decision becomes your spiritual authority. It elevates your vision. It sharpens your hearing. It deepens your discernment. Suddenly you begin to recognize divine timing where you once saw delays. You begin to perceive protection where you previously felt rejection. You begin to SBRE God's hand moving behind the scenes where you once thought nothing was happening at all. Anchored faith turns confusion into clarity and uncertainty into purpose. One of the greatest transformations that occurs in this state of anchoring is the shift from desperation to expectation. Desperation, CBR carries fear, pressure, and emotional instability. Expectation carries peace, readiness, and spiritual strength. When you detach from the outcome, You no longer beg for what God has already promised. You begin to wait with authority instead of anxiety. You begin to prepare as if the blessing is already die on its way, because something within you knows that God is too faithful to leave you where you are. This expectation is not naive, it is prophetic. It sees ahead. It senses what is coming. It prepares the room of your life for a blessing you have not yet touched. Anchored faith also removes the BBR linders that worry places on your vision. When fear governs your decisions, you interpret everything as a threat. But when trust governs your heart, you interpret everything as a possibility. You start recognizing divine alignments with people, ideas, resources, and opportunities. You begin noticing that what once seemed closed off is now within reach, not because the door changed, but because your heart did. Faith that is anchored in God creates access. It unlocks paths that were invisible. It reveals answers that were hidden. It draws provision from unexpected directions. This posture of the HBR earth also becomes a silent signal to heaven that you can handle what God wants to give you. For many people, the blessing delays not because heaven is unwilling, but because the heart is unsteady. When you anchor your faith in God's character, your spirit stabilizes in a way that prepares you for increase. You no longer tie your value to results. You no longer crumble under pressure. You no longer panic when circumstances shift. And because nothing external has the power to disrupt your internal stability, God can trust you with a blessing that carries weight, responsibility, and influence. Final transformation that takes place when you detach from outcomes and root your faith in God is this. You begin to live from victory rather than toward victory. You no longer wait for breakthrough to feel secure. You feel secure because you know breakthrough is inevitable. You no longer wait for blessings to feel favored. You feel favored because you know God's hand is already moving. You no longer measure God's faithfulness by what you see, you measure it by who He has always been. And when you reach this place, when your heart is steady, your faith is anchored, and your spirit is free, Havbaran begins releasing what was always yours. Because a heart that trusts God fully is a heart ready to receive fully. When everything is said and done, the true battle was never about money, opportunities, or timing. It was always about your heart. The shaking, the stretching, the detaching, the refimbering, all of it was preparation for the place God is taking you. He has not brought you through seasons of uncertainty to abandon you now. Everything you endured, everything you released, everything you surrendered has positioned you to receive a blessing that carries both purpose and permanence. You have walked through the fire and discovered that your peace does not come from circumstances. It comes from the one who stands above them. You have learned to trust not in the outcome, but in the God who authors outcomes. And now heaven is ready to respond. You are stepping into a season where your inner stability will produce outer increase. What once rattled you no longer shakes you. What once intimidated you now looks small. What once felt overwhelming now feels temporary. This is the proof that your heart has matured, your spirit has strengthened, and your faith has become unmovable. And BBR, because you have reached this place, because you have allowed God to detach, reshape, and anchor your soul, what is coming to you will not slip through your fingers. It will not be delayed. It will not be taken. It will not be hindered. You are ready in a way you were not before. So walk forward now with boldness. Walk forward with peace. Walk forward with the quiet confidence of someone who knows heaven has already spoken on their behalf. Your blessing is not waiting on the world to change it, has been waiting on your heart to align. And now that it has, everything that belongs to you, every open door, every divine connection, every financial increase, every supernatural provision is moving toward you even now. stand firm, stay expectant, keep your heart free, for the God who refined you is the same God who will reward you. And the season you are entering will reveal why the journey you endured was necessary. Your breakthrough is not coming. Your breakthrough has already begun.